Ahoy Buccaneers and Buccarinas, my name is Captain Yugioh and welcome back to the channel once again, doing the thing that we always do, which is talk about things relating to Overwatch, Hearthstone, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Hey! I know, I'm so clever. Alright, so in today's topic I actually want to finally get around to talking about Master Rule 4's revision that is also kind of fixing the Master Rule 4 problem, but is also potentially Master Rule 5, sort of, in a nutshell. So, before anything else, don't forget to like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell. We do Overwatch videos on Tuesdays, Hearthstone videos on Thursdays, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos every Friday. So, Master Rule 5. What's that all about, anyway? I mean, I know technically it's not Master Rule 5, it's Master Rule 4, revision and stuff, but given that it's about to go into effect officially in the TCG in a couple of weeks, I figure I would take a quick look at it and just analyze the pros and cons. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the last few months, you probably have heard about the Master Rule 4 revision, unofficially known as Master Rule 5 by the general populace. What this does is basically it takes the Master Rule 4 from before and revises it such that you're able to take Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters, which normally would have been restricted to just the extra monster zone under the Master Rule 4, and now allows them to appear in the main monster zone, limiting the extra monster zone down to just Link monsters, which were specifically designed with that in mind, and Pendulum monsters, which would otherwise be, you know, running rampant as always. So, what are the pros, what are the cons, what's the good stuff that's happening, and what's the bad stuff that's happening? So, good things that are happening. Well, one of the good things that happens is that you get to have a lot more decks available in the format. I mean, that's not to say that decks weren't available before, but there were a lot of archetypes and decks that just didn't really like Master Rule 4 because, well, you know, you had to run Link monsters if you were going to summon something out of the extra deck. And a lot of different decks didn't really take well to that because they lacked a lot of Link monsters, especially early on when you only had 2 Link monsters kind of in the game to really work around. Nowadays we have a ton of Link monsters, a plethora of Link monsters, but it's also something that's like, it feels less of a, you know, cool new inventive mechanic and more of a requirement to play. And that was one of the biggest cons with Master Rule 4 in general, so this revision pulls back on that and allows a lot of decks that weren't really able to function under Master Rule 4 and allows them to actually be able to play with the rest of the game, you know, so that way they don't have to rely on Link monsters so much. This also allows us to open up our extra decks quite a bit, because now because you're no longer required to run Link monsters in order to summon out your extra deck monsters, you don't have to devote the space specifically to those Link monsters, so you get to kind of expand on your options and do a whole lot of other plays. You get to do more things with the Master Rule 4 revision as a result. So, one of the big things that a lot of people will recall is Synchro Spam decks, which were big, way long time ago, where you could just play out a bunch of Synchro monsters and then draw a lot of cards with Hyper Librarian and get to Quasar Dragon and just destroy people all the time. Synchro Spam was basically a really big deck because of this, because it could accrue a lot of advantage and summon out a lot of extra deck monsters. And of course, Master Rule 4, you know, kind of stomped that. You know, stomped it pretty good. Now, a lot of things have also kind of changed in order to keep up with Master Rule 4's revision, especially in the OCG. The OCG's already got their ban list out, and they actually have a few cards that have been chosen specifically, probably because of their interactions with Master Rule 4. I mean, I think Konami is in anticipation of that to some degree, so they're trying to keep it, you know, pretty stable on the front, you know, before things get all crazy. But another good thing about this change is that it allows Konami to actually design archetypes without forcing in Link monsters. Since they're no longer requiring, you know, Link monsters within every single deck, now they can actually build a lot of different archetypes that are kind of like, you know, stuff like Dragon Maids, or, you know, stuff that isn't like, you know, Math Mechs, where it's like, you know, you can play this big monster, but you have to play it in your extra monster zone in order for it to be super awesome and stuff. Like, Math Mechs still have the option to play that, but they have the option to play other cards in their deck now as well. And it just kind of expands on the entire concept and allows you know, a lot more archetypes to potentially flourish in this new format. And there's a few other minor changes that have kind of gone in through all these revisions. For instance, the OCG also has reverted a change, actually, or rather not reverted. The OCG's actually taken something that we have understood as a fundamental aspect of a particular card type, which is to say, traps that become monsters, and has completely revised it, where now they're no longer occupying the spell and trap zone when they're treated as a monster. Now they actually free up that spell and trap zone, and that really revolutionizes that whole concept. So, I'm just saying, there's probably going to be some crazy trap monster deck or something like that that's just going to go nuts. Could be Eldritch. Might be Eldritch. So yeah, they opened up a lot of design space by kind of implementing this revision. They opened up a lot of decks to come into the formats. They have a lot of different things that just really help out. So what are the cons? What could possibly, you know, detract from Master Rule 4's revision? Well, Pendulum monsters are still kind of nerfed, so I mean, if you're a Pendulum player, you still kind of have to operate within the realms of everything that's going on. Probably one of the bigger cons is that this does open up the field to a lot more degenerate combos. And that's just kind of the inherent risk when you're kind of broadening what can happen in terms of gameplay. I mean, there's a good reason they hit Junk Speeder in the OCG, which can summon out a bunch of Synchron monsters from your deck, because then you can just continue to go into a bunch of Synchro spamming plays now that it's kind of open. In Master Rule 4 right now, Junk Speeder's not really like a crazy card, because it's like, yeah, you can bring out a bunch of different monsters, but you're only limited to Synchro monsters, and you may only have like 1, maybe 2 spaces for that. You'd have to kind of plan out your turn a little more. Well, now you could potentially just go into Junk Speeder and then just Synchro climb up and just take care of things that way. There's a lot of potential for these kinds of things to basically become a little bit crazier in the years to come. There's already talk about a particular combination of cards that forms the Apex Avian Infinite Negation combo, which you can imagine is not exactly a great thing when you can, you know, you can pick, it's called the Infinite Negation combo. There's a reason nobody's gonna like it, because it infinitely negates as a combo. Yeah. So just imagine Master Rule 4's revision opening up that entire playfield such that you don't have to use specific Link monsters, which, to be fair, right now it's doable with specific Link monsters. But now you may not have to go into those specific Link monsters in order to capitalize on this entire endeavor, and that's the scary part. So it's one of those things that's kind of like we're opening up an entire field to potentially more dangerous, more degenerate combos in that same vein. I'm not saying there's going to be more crazy Infinite Negate kind of combos like that, but there's a lot of potential for some pretty broken stuff to appear out of that. We have a ton of fusion monsters, we have a ton of synchro monsters, we've had a ton of Exceed monsters, and they've only been getting more of each kind over the years. So it's very likely that we are going to run into something that's probably going to just destroy kind of what we know. And that could be something that happens now, it could be something that happens later on down the road when we get specific support from Konami, we don't really know. But this is kind of part of the, you know, risk with this entire endeavor, is that you are opening up the field to that possibility. It's not something that should be like, you know, you're gotta like look at it and be like, oh, this is a terrible thing now, this whole thing is sucky, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen, everything's horrible. No, it's not like that. It's not like that. No. This is just more of something that's like, this is a risk that we're taking to make the game better. We now have to keep this in mind as we design cards, as we continue to make stuff in the future, and I think Konami is responsible? There's no way they would make a card that's broken or terrible or anything like poorly designed. No, they wouldn't do that. So that's pretty much my quick thoughts on Master Rule 5 in a nutshell. What do you guys think? Leave me a like. Let's talk about this. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I don't even know if anybody's thought about the potential dangers of Master Rule 4's revision or anything like that. It's possible that we've talked about it. It's possible that we've done the opposite of talk about it. Who knows? But in any case, I will see you guys in the next video. It's gonna be great. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do for ever now. I hope I don't get any cabin fever in here. No.